Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. I thought I would create a Ghost of the Week here to showcase while I'm wrapping up the Urban Legends series. So I'm going to give those a few more videos and then wrap that up. But this one was from a suggestion that was done over a year ago. And in looking at the information, one can definitely state that it was very tragic in the sense that there was a lot of unfortunate circumstances, of course, that happened to the ghost involved in this case, and then also to one of the parties who was found quote unquote guilty of her murder. So, very tragic set of incidences. I'll describe all that here, and then also provide information on how to find this ghost if you truly wanted to go search for her, because apparently she haunts a very particular location, and if you do certain things there, then you have a good chance of running into her ghost. So it has to do with the ghost, in this case, of Mamie Thurman, who you're looking at a picture of here. So here's all the information associated with her. Mamie Thurman was someone who lived in the 1900s, the early 1900s, born around 1900 or so, and lived up into her 30s in a place in West Virginia. I think it was called Holden, West Virginia. She was described as polar opposites by different people. So she was either someone who was very quiet, very timid, someone who absolutely did not party, attended church all the time, just very calm, in other words. And then B, she was described by others as being someone who was quite wild, quite promiscuous, someone who basically put that quietness just as an upfront status, while behind the scenes she was actively involved in a lot of sordid affairs, so much so that she was apparently within a club of other women that would go around and be with prominent men within her town. So where the truth is with regards to that, one will never know, because all of that stuff, of course, came after the fact that she was found murdered and people started telling their side of their experiences with her. So as far as her murder and what happened, it happened, it looks like on June 22nd, 1932, because that's when her lifeless body was found on a road called 22 Mountain Road or 22 Mine Road. I guess that depends on where you're looking at it in certain places. Back then, it was called as Trace Mountain. She was found by a young boy, someone named Garland Davis, who was a young deaf mute while he was picking blackberries. So imagine quite a sight like that, to run into something like that whenever it comes to this little boy just nonchalantly picking blackberries. And her body was found to be in a very bad place. Like, in other words, it was found strangled, like the neck was broken, her face was disfigured, and she had, I guess, multiple cuts, and then most prominently I believe there was 2 gunshot wounds to her temple. So clearly, in other words, whoever did this murder didn't just do it and like 2 quick shots and then that's it. No, it seems like they took their time when it came to ensuring that they could do as much bad things as they could to her body. Her throat was also found cut from ear to ear, so quite a ghastly sight. Clearly, though, in this town, in this small town there in West Virginia, when it came to the people of Logan, it was very big news for something like this to happen. I mean, you just didn't have this type of brutality occur there. So everyone wanted to find out what occurred, and they wanted to have someone found guilty. But here's where things start taking a more tragic turn, because this woman, Mamie Thurman, again, whether you believe she was a quiet woman or promiscuous, either way, she had involvements with at least one known person when it came to someone that was to having an affair with her. This is this guy by the name of Harry Robertson. He was someone who was pretty prominent within that quiet small town, because he was someone that worked at a major bank there, held a major position within it. I think he was like the treasurer of that bank. And then he also had a quite prominence within the church there, and then also several other organizations. And then his wife was also pretty prominent, like a socialite of some sort there. So they were absolutely considered to be somewhat of the elites within that town itself. And then, ironically, the husband of Mamie Thurman ended up working for Harry Robertson. And it's just because Mamie Thurman's husband worked as a patrolman, and he was hired, I think I read somewhere, by Harry Robertson, or by the committee that Harry Robertson was on for that town. So a bit of irony when it comes to that. Harry Robertson also had a servant, I guess, slash slave that was there too. I think his name was Clarence Stevenson, and he was there basically doing everything that was needed for Mr. Robertson. So he was someone that lived there, but also at Robertson's home, but did all of the work, I guess, whatever you could constitute in terms of like a handyman slash, I don't know if you could outright call it a slave, because I don't think they had slaves then there, but in essence it was someone that didn't have much rights still within that area, and they had like a lifelong almost servitude. But either way though, I mention all of that because Harry Robinson's elite status meant that when he was being pursued by the police for this crime, he and then also Clarence Stephen against his handyman were both arrested and then taken to jail, and then eventually a court case was coming up, and then that's where things took a further tragic sense because Harry Robertson was able to use his prominence, at least based on the information that I read, to try to make sure that he was not found guilty. And this is because during the actual trial itself, he was able to state that yes, he had a multi-year long affair with Mamie Thurman, but at the very same time, he brought out all the dirty laundry associated with her. Like he said that this was a woman who had an illicit affair with more than a dozen other men. He even featured a list, I guess, of not the men's name because he was careful to protect them, but in terms of, I guess, the times and whatever whatever she was telling him. And then also he was able to state that with regards to her that they were trying to, I guess, run away. Like he was trying to get her to run away with him, but no, she was still someone who wanted to remain promiscuous to multiple men. So it was pretty tragic in a sense that all this bad stuff was being aired out to someone who is deceased. So it's clearly she could not provide any rebuttal, anything as far as her protecting her image, protecting her reputation. It was basically this man, Harry Robertson, almost fighting for his life there on the trial, and because of it, he was almost seeming trying to do anything that he could to make sure that he was considered innocent. This also included his handyman slash I guess butler slash slave Clarence Stevenson, where back then I was reading the information there. Someone quoted that during that time period, such African American handymen, they were basically told to do anything that their owner told them to. So he must have been informed to not say anything bad with regards to Mr. Robertson, lest something bad happens to him. And he did that. Like he did not in any way whatsoever put any negative image about Mr. Robertson, Mr. Harry Robinson. And at the same time, though, I don't think Mr. Robertson stuck out for Clarence Stevenson, because lo and behold, cut to the end of the trial, and the jury found Harry Robinson not guilty, but they found Clarence Stevenson guilty. So the jury actually believed, in this case, the idea that it was the handyman slash slave that killed Mrs. Thurman, while Harry Robinson was the innocent party. And because of this, then Clarence Stevenson was sentenced to life in prison, and he ended up dying something like a decade later while in prison too. So pretty tragic set of circumstances involved, because obviously there was a woman that was killed, but then if you go by what the evidence shows, there was an innocent man that was sent to jail as well because of it. By the way, if you're wondering like where all this evidence comes from that paints Harry Robinson as the murderer, I'll give you the links below. There's 2 parts to it. It's very good. I highly recommend reading this information because it's a little bit lengthy, but it's well worth it, and it showcases a bunch of evidence, all pointing to Harry Robertson. I mean, there was blood on his Ford truck. There was blood in his home, in his own basement. There was a bullet hole or a set of bullet holes found within the basement too that matched, in this case, the information with the death of her. There was a knife that was also found that could have been used for the slashing of the throat from ear to ear. There was more blood found underneath a blood. And I think a mat within the car too, within that Ford car. There was evidence of multiple attempts to try to clean up blood, but it would not all the blood was found. And then also he had like a perfect quote unquote alibi when it came to this circumstance, because he would have been one of the last people to have been with her alive without, I guess, anyone else being able to point to him being with her. And then on top of that, Clarence Stevenson, he had up to the very minute multiple people stating where he was, and clearly he was nowhere near Mary Thurman's body at the time of her death, and yet still he was found guilty. So all pretty tragic stuff. Check out the links when you have a chance. It's well worth a read. Now, as far as what is the ghost and what you can do to visit the ghost of Mamie Thurman, well, here's how it goes. Apparently you have to go straight to that road, the one where it was rumored where she was killed. And when you're there, you can do several things. You can either park your car, let's say, towards the side of the road. Just leave it there as is. You don't have to really do anything else necessarily different. Just park your car there, leave it on neutral. And when you do so, there are going to be handprints that showcase on the car as your car mysteriously starts getting pushed. And the whole idea is that this is Mamie Thurman herself being able to state that, hey, that, you know, she's communicating with you. She's trying to push you out of the way of something, so that way you don't get into any kind of, I guess, problems thereafter, whatever is the case. There's also the idea that if you're there, you can actually see her apparition following the road. This is because several people that have driven down that 22 Mountain Drive road have stated they see a figure walking down that road in older attire, the kind that seems like it's decades old, obviously like not part of our decade, and yet whenever they try to pick that person up, they either disappear outright or they actually do pick up this woman, and when that happens, she ends up disappearing right there within the car itself. So also pretty fascinating. And then there's also the notion that people can hear, like in terms of her wails there within that area. It's just her, of course, wailing with regards to what happened and her circumstance, and then it's just another good indication that if you're there near that location of 22 Mountain Drive, that you'll be able to hear that information right there too. But yes, those are the legends associated with the ghost of Mamie Thurman and how you're able to do so. Apparently she does so more so at night if you wanted to truly visit her rather than in the day. And also another curious thing about her is that she was eventually buried somewhere, but that location that she was buried at, it's still mysterious because nobody else seems to know like where exactly she remains to this day. And that's because there was indeed like a public funeral, like a very large one. In fact, several hundred people came out because everyone wanted to pay tribute to what happened to her. But eventually that cut to a couple of weeks later, that body was moved to another location. There's an official, I guess, report, or official paper that showcases the request to have it moved to a different location. However, that new location doesn't show any evidence of the body being buried there. So that makes it even more interesting because now it puts it in limbo. Like there is no indication of any kind of like where her body is to this day. Because after that notion that yes, she was moved to someplace else, but then there is nothing showcasing where in that new location is. no one knows to this day. So that's also another pretty interesting thing with regards to the tragedy of the ghost of Mamie Thurman. So if anyone has any more information, anyone from that area there in West Virginia, anyone know someone, family members that had heard about this legend, I guess, especially during its time, please post those comments below. That'd be pretty interesting to hear. All around, very sad set of circumstances, not just with her clearly, but also with, in this case, Clarence Stevenson. So much evidence against pointing to the other guy, Robertson, but no, instead he was found guilty, and then that was it. So, all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.